You.
Good, very good.
So how's the excitement levels now that the draw has been made and you get your first real preparation games next week?
Yeah, great. Look, that's probably since we qualified from the league phase, there's been certain, we'll say, stages of the plan for the World Cup that we were able to begin. But the anticipation leading up to the draw, during the draw, then of course being the last country pulled out, um, was pretty exciting. And then look, once we had the draw, then the mindset completely went into overdrive with opposition planning and the real football side of things. Now we'll say zoom in on till the beginning of November.
And just on your opponents, because I think it's been I think people are quite happy with the draw, but then there's probably an element of surprise when you have countries like Uzbekistan, Panama, Paraguay. Obviously, Uzbekistan done very well in the last World Cup. Is that extra preparation need to go in for them sort of teams? Probably is it harder to get info and see matches of them that they've played in qualifying?
Look, our preparation will be very much, no matter who we play down through the years, myself and the staff, we'll be very diligent in our preparation. No matter if it's a tier one country, as they're called, or a tier four, or what you said there, maybe a few unknown countries across the other confederations. But look, football is so universal and it's so global. You can't take anything for granted, especially at youth level. I think a lot of people's minds, when they hear these countries, you might look at their senior teams and kind of make up some judgment without any great evidence on them at this level. So no, we started preparation, post draw straight away. Our first game is Panama. I suppose what's interesting is that you got three different confederations. That's really exciting. Panama, Paraguay, similar sized countries to ourselves population wise. They probably maybe have a million more than us. Panama, they've come out of the South American, we say confederation. So that'd be, the likes of the USA, Mexico, Costa Rica. So they're the kind of opponents that they'd be coming up against from that country. And the one you rightly saw, like Uzbekistan, it's a country of over 35 million people, football number one. Lots going on in their infrastructure and development over the last, we'll say, 10 years, and rightly so. In the last World Cup, as they said, they beat England. So they are emerging, but even more so, and no doubt your guys will be going into research and share a bit with you here on them. They're currently the under 17 Asian champions. So they won that back when we were doing the elite phase. So again, no doubt when you think of Asia, what pops into my mind is Japan, South Korea, but Uzbekistan have got their hands on that cup this year, and Paraguay, look, they've come out of the South America Confederation, so their opponents Argentina, Brazil, the Chiles, and they've qualified from that confederation. So look, at youth level, you just can't take anything for granted. I think if I to conclude with you, I think it's a group every country will feel they have a chance in, and no doubt there's a lot to happen between here and then. But yeah, it's great to have three different confederations. Great experience is going to be for the players and the staff.
And just lastly, you have two new faces in the squad, Ryan Butler and Josh Cullen. How excited are you to get working with them? And does it show the level of depth that you have? And when you think of names like Billy O'Neill, Grady, McDonald, Ade Solanke aren't even in the squad this time. Does that make you very pleased as a manager that you have so many options?
Yeah, I suppose, look, depth can change with each age group, and I think you're always looking to make the squad stronger and add to depth, because there's so much can come between tournaments, and over the next few months, players could be performing well right now. You've injuries can crop up, you've loss of form can kick in, so we're always looking at players. So yeah, to add in like Josh and Ryan, they've played first team football in the first division in the League of Ireland the last number of months. They're in on merit. They've performed well with their teams, and they're going to get an opportunity to be exposed now to the upcoming games we have coming for them in June. So it's great to add a bit of freshness to the squad, and shows people, we are out there looking, and if players are performing, especially, if they're performing in the older age groups, it's a great opportunity. But on the depth one, what's always interesting is sometimes depending on the area of the pitch, your depth could be strong. Just say, for example, in defence one year, the next year could be attackers, and so we're always trying to be probably balanced when we get the squad. But I suppose my point is that look, it's great the two boys are coming in, and I've no doubt they can't wait to come in and test themselves on the international stage.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Colin.
No problem, Connor. Thank you.
If anyone's putting their hands up for the live bit, you just give me a nod. So if anyone wants to come in there, just let me know. If not, I can go straight to embargoed, whatever works. Take that as embargoed then. Does anyone want to kick off that part first? We'll go with you, Sean.
Cheers, Adam. Hi, Colin. How are you?
Good, Sean.
Just on the squad, there's a nice mix of, players from outside Ireland and League of Ireland players. It just shows you the strength and depth there is in the League of Ireland when you see domestic players in the same squad as, the likes of Benfica, Newcastle, and so on.
Yeah, I suppose with this age group, look at it's 2008 is what we're talking about. We've got a handful of 2009s coming with us as well. But that's what the World Cup will say, and the previous European will say season this year is the age group that it's been geared at. And I suppose to take it back a little bit, as we all know with Brexit and the impact that has had, especially going to the UK, some players now are going further afield into Europe, taking their leap of faith that way in the development of their game. But before they went, like if you look at the current, we'd say the squad that maybe, let's go back to the qualification in March. I think it was 16 or 17 that had played in our academy system in the League of Ireland within that squad, and now a couple of more added into this. So it just shows you the importance of it. It shows you the excellent work that's going on in all the provinces and within the leagues with the coaches there. And look, they can take a lot of credit, and have to take a lot of credit for this as well, because. We are up against it. Make no bones about that with the way where other countries start and how they're resourced. But it just shows you that we do have something, and we have to lean on that. And there is something going on in the country that is very positive. It's a good mix, but a lot of them, if you want to say, have come through our system. And then you have the add-ons. You said a few players that have come from, we'd say like Rory from Newcastle. He's been on our radar from 12 years of age. Grady, was in Canada on a radar from 12 years of age. All with Irish connection, but it fitted in seamlessly. And they all add. They all add to the squad. They're all around professional environments and have been. And when players come together from different, we'll say, clubs number one in the country and from clubs out of the side of the country, that's how players get better as well. Do you know what I mean? When they're put in together, when they talk together, when they watch each other training, we'd be big on that. Where how they build relationships, and they see what they're doing, and they pick things up off each other. That's how players get better as well. And it's diverse, but at the same way, it's brilliant to see the high percentage have come through here. Pre-League of Ireland as well. They didn't just land into a League of Ireland club. I suppose the term now I think is grassroots. I'd have played schoolboys in this country as well. That was always the word I had. But it's grassroots clubs now. They'd have come through, and that relationship has improved. But that's where the players have started out. So I think that's a huge thing as well to get across. That those boys have started. For example, but I'm just saying Ringmahon or Salthill Devon or Moorview, and all of a sudden they progress into League of Ireland, and now look at some of them are going to be they were on the European stage, and now they have an opportunity to push themselves into the world stage. It's brilliant for a country.
And obviously academy funding and infrastructure is like the big talking point at the moment. Are you hopeful that hopefully some success later in the year in Qatar could be an extra little bit of a catalyst to drive home that point?
Yeah. Look, yes, John, but Sean, sorry, say yes. But look, I'm obviously very passionate about this as well because I've come through the whole system in this country. Do you know what I mean? I said to you, I played schoolboys, I played Munster Senior League, I played League of Ireland. I've dedicated myself to working with young players, like a lot of people in this country, across different parts of the country as well. But like, I think government could look at the World Cup, absolutely. But whether it's the World Cup or not, we have to secure funding. It has to be secured to progress, basically. And that funding, as you rightly, infrastructure, facilities. But for me, we have to get expertise working in clubs that are full time, and that's going to take a long time to get. But it's going to have to start. Whether on the coaching side, on the administration side, on the performance side, the supports that need to go into our clubs earlier in order for us to progress and compete at international levels. I see it. I'm on the cold front. We're up against it. We are competitive. But if we want to keep in those, we'll say competitive, we say layers, we have to secure funding because, and I'll always say this, it's not the tier one countries I'd be comparing ourselves to. And so what I mean with that, like the Portugals, the Spains, they're just all on a different level completely and have been right through, their history. I'm talking now about the Eastern Bloc countries. I'm talking about tier 3 countries, Scandinavian countries. They are all developing and accelerating their resource and development every year. And for us to be in that mix, we really have to secure the funding. And then, I think a lot of the plan is ready to push in. The clubs have a lot of ideas that they want to do. But I think for me that, then it allows, we'll say, getting full-time people in working with the players at a younger age. It's going to be vital to our future.
Well said. Appreciate it, Colin. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah. Can I jump in there? Hey, Colin, Son here. How are you?
Owen, how are you?
Good, you? Congrats anyway. I don't think we've spoken since qualified. I know obviously you got this plan for next week. Do you know your plan for the rest of the year going forward yet?
Yeah, well, look, we're right. Yeah, so I suppose I'd probably work back with you. You might kind of figure out what I mean with this. So the World Cup will kick off. The first game, we start on November 5th.
Yeah.
The opening games kick off on the 3rd. So right now our plan is the kind of, we'll say around the 27th of October is to bring the players in. So we'll probably have to maybe travel somewhere, so that week out before the World Cup, we'll have to go somewhere. A lot of countries, since the draw just took place over the weekend, a lot's going on in the background around that, where you can go, teams you can get, similar confederations you're trying to set up. So we're trying to set up a game that week prior to the World Cup. Then we'll, if not, we'll use the October international window, we'll say at the start of October. Then we'll use the international window in September, and then the June window, which we're going away next weekend. So where the players are now, just to probably share with you there as well, like there's international windows, as you know, set out for the senior teams, both men and women, and it's the same at youth. And the age the players are at now, that becomes a really important part to our planning, because a lot of the squads, players in the squads are closer now to say, so as you know, with some of the lads in League of Ireland, they're in League of Ireland senior squads, as you know, a number of them. Some of them not quite yet, but maybe training with senior teams behind the scenes, and as well across the water or in Europe. Some of them are playing higher up. So getting players released is very difficult outside international windows. So we try and get the planning done to make sure that collaboration is done with the clubs. Because we understand, especially our League of Ireland season, you see how busy it's going to be now from when we come back post-June event right through the summer. But the big plus for us there is, the months of July and August, it's a great opportunity for us to be tracking the players, following the players, especially the players are playing are in the league here. And then the boys are outside the country will be starting their pre-season at the end of June. So if that answers them a little bit for you and gives you a bit of insight to what we're kind of planning. But yeah, so we'll have kind of 3-4 events that will be completely pre-planned. And then the rest, it'll be kind of outside it a little bit. But
you'll play games, and they won't just be training camps, will they?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's a game, like it'll be games. Yeah. So for next week, to give you an idea, like we're playing Norway, Turkey, Croatia, all in Croatia in that order. but we're actually playing. So our group is 08s. I've put the players into a 07 competition.
Right.
So we're playing these countries that are they're just completing their under 18 season, say. So technically they're going into under 19s now. So they're preparing for their September qualifiers or October qualifiers, say in the autumn or quarter 4 this year. So we're going to stretch the players. It's going to be a massive challenge, but it's one I looked at deeply to kind of say, right, this will be the time to do it because we still have plenty of chance to preparation. So they'll be tough games, yeah, European opposition. Then in September at the moment, we are going away. There's a plan to play a number of teams. At the moment, we can't confirm, but again, we're trying to get, it might be one Europe, one South America, one Asian, do you know what I mean? Depending on how that can be formed. So there's lots of challenges there, but we will have games, in September. And that one then in October, that's the ideal for me, that, you know, before we kick off that historic game on the 5th of November, that we have a game maybe pre-planned that week before. And it's what a lot of countries at the moment are trying to do post-draw.
Yeah, good stuff. And just, I know the League of Ireland Premier season ends on November 1st and the cup final is the week after. I don't know, is there a FIFA ruling or is this a tricky situation for you?
Look, I've encountered plenty of tricky situations in this role. Look, you're right. There's not a FIFA window to answer you honestly at that time. It's one we just gotta, manage and just watch it as time unfolds over the summer. You never know. Certain teams might have certain leagues wrapped up, might be in or out of cups. But look, the World Cup, look, you want your best players. Do you know what I mean? It's simple as that. You want your best players. What an opportunity to showcase, individuals from our clubs in this country as well. For me, you won't get a better stage for young players. But look, it's something very aware of, and look, it's something I will be in a communication with clubs leading into it. But at the end of the day, the players contracted to the clubs, but we will want our best players for the World Cup. So hopefully when you're asking me that question, maybe in later September or earlier October, we have more clarity on it. So that's just the honest one.
Yeah, fair enough. You haven't, there's one club in particular, I suppose we're talking about looking at your squad, but you haven't been talking to any clubs at the moment about it then?
No, initially, for me, I don't, the clubs have they have to respect they're coming into their final league game this Friday. They have a break. Those clubs are going to be planning from Europe. I have huge respect for the people in those clubs and that are working with them. I know them. I have relationships with them. But there'll be a time when we'll have to probably talk about it. But right now, we just got to let the players get on and the club get on with, they're making their mark both here in the country and in Europe as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of following on from what Sean was talking about in academies, what could this do for Irish football, just in terms of in November people tuning in and watching a World Cup with Ireland in it again? Like, doesn't matter at what level, it's just still a World Cup.
Yeah, I'd agree wholeheartedly. Look, if it's historic, and look, I'll put a bit of context on it as well, right? For us here, for us to get there, right? For me, Europe it's the hardest confederation and toughest federation to get out of, right? So when we started out in the tournament, there was 54 countries start. That then goes into a second phase of 28. We got to there. And then out of 28, you may be aware or not, but the under-17 Euros are going on at the moment. And UEFA, in their wisest, we'll say, moments, have cut the under-17 tournament to 8 teams this year. So only 7 qualified. So if we would have qualified if this was last year for the Euros, because we finished second. So coming to my point, only 7 countries could qualify from Europe, we'll say, if you topped your group in the elite phase in March. And what they did then, to be fair, they gave 11 places for the World Cup. So only 4 countries, we were in, there was 7 groups going on in March. So only 4 countries could qualify from the other 7 groups. You know what I mean? So there was 3 countries that finished second in March that didn't qualify. But here's the big one. Spain haven't qualified for this. We all, they're the powerhouse, at senior level, we all know about them, but at youth level, and the other country that would be a huge powerhouse in youth football would be the Netherlands. 2 of those countries haven't qualified for this. We have. So I'd say we're doing something right. And if you also look at it as well, the other point I'd make is, I'm doing this a while now. I think I'm in my 8th year as head coach. This will be our 5th major competition for this age group. We've been to 4 European finals, and this will be our first World Cup. So on to just getting those points, but on your, like, what can it do for the country? It can inspire, it can showcase the talent we have. But for me, the big one as well is it's the generation that are coming underneath the 17 groups. You know what I mean? And that's both boys and girls. Like, the 16 groups that are there, there's 15s before they come in. There's going to be young boys and young girls, 10, 11, 12, looking at this, seeing players, especially that are playing in this country, knowing them, getting excited about that. And hopefully that can inspire them, but a real message to them going, look, here's a smaller country. Not to say we have a small mentality or anything, but we're on the World Cup stage. And there's my point of, like, that is so hard to get. Other confederations get certain places, and that's just the way it is. I get that. And I'm a big one on that one, that it'll just, to get out of Europe, it's an incredible achievement for us, and one has to be acknowledged. But now we have to move on to, right, we've done that, but hopefully that's going to inspire. But how do we make that the norm, I think, might be the question. We'll say tie into the whole government and securing funding, to make it the norm. Look, tournament football is tricky. Like, it's very easily we could get knocked out in the first round of tournaments, because that's probably the other point. In the 54 countries in Europe, I've experienced and played against so many of them, and being really honest, what I would say to you in Europe is there's probably 7 or 8 countries that you probably might consider, and I'm not using this word to in any appropriate way, but that they might be weak, let's say, that you'd probably say, yeah, you'll beat them.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you right now, from what I've experienced over the last 7, 8 years, 45, 46, 47 countries, you're in for a game.
Yeah.
Like, you're in for a game. Like every country is, upping it, and always what comes along, and it's probably coming back to what Conor asked about earlier about certain countries. Any country could have a really good crop of players, but they might not be a tier 1 country, and that's why you have to be diligent, prepare, not take anything for granted. So hopefully there's a bit to stew on there for you.
All right. Thanks, Colin. Best of luck.
Cheers, Owen.
Can I just jump in there? Sorry, because I have to run off and do a second school run here. Just on back to Owen's point about talking to clubs, like, is your argument going to be, you haven't actually qualified for too many World Cups, but you look at the impact on the players that have played at World Cups back in the late 90s, 2003 in the UAE, and where it's kind of progressed their careers.
Yeah, like, I suppose Mark said it's historic for this age group, absolutely. And look, I saw those teams that qualified under Brian and got to those World Cups, and the senior teams. I've come through all that myself here as well, and it can really absolutely kick a player's career on, because they're on the world stage. Like, you're going to have every confederation, every, we say, scouts, not just from Europe but from all the world. And looking at all these teams, and we're right in there, and of course it can have a bounce for the players, we'll say, further career, but I suppose as a head coach, then I've got to always make sure, it is very important about their individual development, but as any player that comes into our under-17 setup has to understand the team is the biggest star, and they all have to we'll say, come on board with that. But yeah, I just think it could have, of course, the player can get a big bonus for them for their future, and the country as a whole. Like, because there's a lot of coaches I would, mix with or speak to that, post games or before tournaments, or even met at the draw. And, there's a lot of respect for our teams. You know what I mean? There's a lot of respect. These coaches can see, what good players are. They can see how we're performing. I don't think a lot of countries like playing us, and then we got to make sure we keep that in our we'll say identity as well, and making sure we add to it as well.
Cheers. And just one more for me.
What do you make of the structure of the 48 team World Cup? Because obviously this is the first proper experience of it before 2026.
I think purely from a footballing, we'll say, because look, you think about all the countries, so global, so universal. I think it's great, and I think it's great for countries like ourselves, and they're not into this smaller country thing, but I think you understand my point, like that it is so difficult to qualify. And Mark, what I go back with there, like there was 11 places only for Europe this year to qualify for the World Cup. Like up to last year to qualify for the Under-17 World Cup, there was only 5 places for Europe. And we've been close on 2 occasions with the Under-17s. We lost to a phenomenal Spain team in 2023, which had, as you all know, that winger playing with them and ripping it up at a senior level for Spain and Barcelona. And then we played a very brilliant English team who had Phil Foden, Jordan Sancho playing, Mark Gui at the back. Really good team back in 2017. So those 2 games, and I'm saying we were in a position, even in those years, we were that close to getting to a World Cup, and there was only 5 places. And now we've got there. But my point is saying I think it's a great idea from UEFA to open up more from federations, because if we always look at the history and the tradition of European finals or say World Cups, I suppose 8 to 9 times out of 10, the best top countries are going to get there. But football, as said, it's so global. It's giving opportunities of countries that are developing in different tiers. We say like 2, 3, tier 4s, gives you an opportunity to try and get in there. And maybe that can be a big spark for football in that country.
Super. Well, look, like I said, I haven't talked to you myself now, so congratulations on qualifying and all the best for the preparations.
Thank you.
John, if you want to come in there, we've got about 10 minutes left on it for yourself and Dylan, but I'd say it's plenty of time for you guys. So,
just to echo, congratulations, Colin. Well done.
Thanks,
John. Just a couple of things. Suppose before you just on housekeeping, you mentioned the windows there, September, October. Does that clash with your next group for their qualifiers?
The current 2009s? Yes, yeah. So
do you let your assistant do that one, or is there?
No, okay, I get your question right. So, no, the 2009s, there'll be staff put in place for that group. So so right now, I've been given focus to work with the 2008s to continue through with them. So behind the scenes again, one that's out of my, we'll say, remit or hands. There'll be different staff with the 09s.
Okay, and just you mentioned about UEFA cutting the number of teams at the Euros, whereas FIFA have increased theirs. Do you know is there any plans for UEFA? Because the World Cup is now an annual event, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Next 5 years it'll be annual, and Qatar have signed we'll say the contract for it.
So is UEFA's plans to keep it at this mini tournament next year, which will have this anomaly of teams not qualifying for the Euros but qualifying for the World Cup, like you?
Yes, right now, John. Yeah, right now it's the same for next season. That'll be only an 8-team tournament, but 11 places still. So the elite phase, but like it's still trying. You still have to get through that first phase in the autumn, and so it probably turns to that kind of mindset. Now, if you can get through the first phase, you're playing not alone for trying a European position, but also a World Cup position, which we just experienced in March. So I suppose 11 places is good from Europe. Personally, I think it could be increased another 4 at least, because as I said, looking at the other confederations, it's the toughest one to get out of. It really, really is. But no, right now, that's what they have in place for the 25-26 season in UEFA.
And just one player who had a major influence on you getting there was Jaden Umeh. Can you just tell us about how he's doing, or do you, just being on the continent, do you get over to watch him at all, or what's sort of the latest on him?
No, look, I suppose Connor probably asked there as well earlier about players are seeing and gathering information. Look, I suppose firstly, I'd be with the age of the player as well, I'd be, in touch with Jaden. We'd be in touch with the club more so as well. You've access to all, we've access to all these games. Y Scout, you probably have heard that. It's a great, we'd say, resource tool, and you can get games in countries at different ages on it. So it's not just the senior. It's a broader base, which is a fantastic resource. So how is he doing? He's doing well. He's gone over since. Look, he played a year up for us last year with the 17s as well. He's gone over since last June. I think it's a real good example of someone's gone away. I suppose what excites me is he's gone to a club like Benfica. If we think about Portugal, the type of players and profile of players, attacking players, fullbacks and wingers, very good midfielders. Like he's got big challenges because they're big on wide play. They're big on those creative players in wide areas. But for him to be getting up every morning and going into that environment, and as I said earlier, not only picking things up from coaches, but with players that can, and I can see the improvements. Certain certain details in his game that have improved massively, that had a big impact for us then internationally. And then look, he's matured. You can see he's matured, which is another thing that can be a big challenge for a younger boy when he's gone away. But you can see he's enjoying his football. You can see he's enjoying where he is, and he's just rolled into the international side of things with that kind of spirit, with that kind of personality he has. And it's so far he's had I would say from the second half of the season this year from him has been very, very progressive.
And just finally, for me, more just of a housekeeping thing, we won't dwell on it. I know you reported a racism incident in March. Have you heard anything back on that?
The only thing I would hear back as a head coach, you see, it's still openly being investigated.
Right.
That's exactly where it's at. And again, people behind the scenes would deal with that. But look, as I said at the time, completely inappropriate, condemn it, has got no place in it. And I know that's between UEFA and we'll say the behind the scenes in the FAI, but it's still ongoing.
Okay, that's fine. All the best,
No
Colin.
problem. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there. Can you hear me, Colin?
Yeah, I can hear you there.
Yeah.
I'll leave the final question with you, bud.
Perfect. First off, Colin, I want to say congratulations on qualifying for the World Cup. It's great to see. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is I wanted to ask you about Jaden's, but like more broadly speaking, can you see any difference between, let's say, the players playing on the continent versus players based in the UK and Ireland? Is there any difference how they are in training, how they are on the ball, off the ball? Like I've done a bit of reading about this in my own time of how was it in France they noticed the difference between players based in Italy versus Spain. Have you noticed that yourself?
So what's the last part you said there, Dylan? Sorry about you.
Have you noticed any difference between, let's say, young players who would play their trade in Spain versus like our Portugal, Jaden's case, versus someone playing in the UK?
Yeah, look, I suppose what's improved here, firstly, through education and through coaches that are working, the big emphasis, trying to develop the individual technical side of players. And that's why I'm saying that has to start earlier. That's probably still the one big difference with some players that might be playing in the continents. Some of that finer detail in their we'll say in their technical qualities and say what they need to deliberately practice day in and day out individually, that is, and how that can impact the individual. And then when it comes into the team game, that'll be a big focus. It's something that is zoomed in on here, but for me, you still have to be doing that a lot earlier. Profile of maybe the athleticism in some of the players. And when I say that, I'm not talking about your bodybuilder or your 400-meter sprinter. I'm talking about those athletic actions that you need to play football with. So speed, change of direction. Those shorter bursts, being able to repeat and maintain. There's a big focus. There's a big focus on trying to improve. I suppose my point would be to players in that they can handle intensity and that they can play at intense levels. That's something we have to keep improving on.
Brilliant. Thanks, Colin.
Okay, Colin. You're on mute, Adam.
Jeez, kiddo. I think that's everything, everyone. Thanks so much for that. Anything else you need, I've got it recorded if you need me to send it on. Thanks, Colin, as well for your time. Guys, if you need me to give you a shout in between now and the first game. The first game is next Wednesday against Norway. Just give me a shout and I'll speak to you. Well, thanks for jumping on the call, everyone. And I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks, lads.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Bye.
Cheers.
Lansdowne